Hello, everyone. Welcome to Data Umbrella's webinar. I'm going to do a brief introduction about Data Umbrella, and then I'll open it up for our presenters today. And if you have any questions, ask in the chat, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. This is being recorded and will be placed in our YouTube within a few days of the webinar. About Data Umbrella, we organize data science and open source events for the community, and we are a nonprofit organization. My name is Reshma. I'm based in New York in the US. Our other team members are Beryl, based in Nairobi, Kenya, and Sangam in southern India. We have a code of conduct, and we thank you for helping to make this a welcoming, friendly community for all. Our Data Umbrella YouTube channel has a very rich library of events, and I will share the link in the chat, and this video as well will be posted there. We have various playlists such as career advice, data visualization. We basically focus on Python, R, open source, and some career development as well. These are our most active social media platforms. So Meetup is where we post any upcoming events. YouTube is our recordings. We have a newsletter, which has been not so frequent this year, but it's a few times a year. Our blog, our website is all on GitHub. And we do share our upcoming events on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. This platform that we use is called Big Marker. On the top right, you will see CC, which means closed captioning. So if you would like a live transcript, if you'd like those words at the bottom to follow along, that's the way you can access it. We have an online suggestion box, which I will also share the link to. If you have any suggestions for future event topics, let us know. If you have any feedback on this event, let us know. If you have any technical issues to communicate, let us know. And if you have any other feedback, let us know. And if you'd like to speak at an event that fits our mission, which is open source and data science, let us know. Meetup event. Today's talk is Dataverse, an open source platform for research data. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Kaylin Boyd. Kaylin is the Interim Director of Data Science and Product Research at Harvard's Institute for Quantitative Social Sciences, otherwise known as IQSS. Previously, Kaylin established and led the Harvard Library Research Data Services Program, which connects the Harvard community to resources and services throughout the research data lifecycle. Boyd holds a BA in linguistics from Stanford University, an MA in anthropology and women's studies from Brandeis University, and both an MS and a PhD in library and information science from Simmons University. Kaylin's research focuses on modeling research data, the socio-technical characteristics of research data repositories, and investigating how data curators identify, define, and repair research data within these repositories. Philip works at the UIT, the Arctic University of Norway, as Senior Research Librarian and Head of Dataverse NO Repository Management. He is currently chairing the steering committee of the Global Dataverse Community Consortium, GDCC. Sonia Maria Barbosa. Sonia is the Associate Director of Dataverse Support, Data Curation, and the Murray Research Archive. She collaborates with the Harvard Database Project team to support users of the software and to direct the stewardship and governance of the Harvard Dataverse repository. She holds a BA and BSN and has over 30 years of experience working in data curation, sensitive data sharing, and reuse. And with that, I am going to hand over the microphone and screen share over to our speakers.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I guess I'll take it away. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're looking forward to telling you a bit about the Dataverse Project and the Global Dataverse Community Consortium. Next slide. There's information about us. Thank you very much for the introduction, but here's on to our agenda. First, we're going to introduce the Dataverse Project, tell you a bit about what it is. We're going to talk a bit about research data sharing and the research data repository ecosystem, then follow on with Dataverse in practice, where we're going to talk a bit about the Dataverse software itself, its features, functionality, Harvard Dataverse specifically, a specific Dataverse installation, and then we're going to close out with the Global Dataverse Community Consortium and how to get involved. So let's get started. The Dataverse Project team develops an open source data repository software platform. There are currently 145 Dataverse installations in over 40 countries around the world. The Dataverse platform supports numerous metadata and data format standards, file previewers, external tools, and a number of integrations, such as our integrations with RSpace and Jupyter Notebooks. The project was founded in 1997 by Harvard professor Dr. Gary King and was initially conceived of as a social sciences data repository software. But over the years, the Dataverse open source community has grown to include data from many disciplines, from astrophysics and archaeology to biomedical and political science. The Dataverse platform is an easy and fair way to share and get credit for your research data. The acronym FAIR, F-A-I-R, stands for Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, and Reusable for Machines and People. FAIR platforms and tools, like research data repositories, such as Dataverse, ensure that data, journal articles, computational workflows, software, and other research objects can be discovered and reused to further scientific exploration. Which leads us to this question of what is research data? You're all familiar with data generically, but research data has some additional properties. Specifically, research data is evidence of a phenomena that's going to be used in a scholarly argument. Because it's evidence, it must be managed carefully over its lifetime of use to ensure that future scholars can depend upon its authenticity and integrity. There's no raw or natural data. Whether something is or isn't data depends on the context. Therefore, for researchers, data is in the eye of the beholder. So one researcher's evidence may be another researcher's noise. Unsurprisingly, research data is more than just numerical data, numerical values in a tabular file, which is often what people think of when they hear the word data. This slide shows you a range of forms of data that research data can take that we're familiar with handling. These include things like physical samples, images, transcripts, audio and video files, as well as maps. All can be data, depending upon the context and the research question that's being posed. Research data sharing has become an expected part of the research process. Many funders, such as the National Institutes for Health and the National Science Foundation in the United States, and other funders abroad, require funding recipients to share their research data. Research data repositories support these funder requirements and data sharing capabilities. Data sharing has numerous benefits for researchers, including letting them comply with funder requirements, as I mentioned, getting credit for their work in the form of citations, gaining new insights from the existing data, which is secondary data reuse, increasing research efficiency, and ultimately data sharing, of course, serves the long tail of science. Researchers share the data in many different ways, like email, thumb drives, Dropbox, Google Drive, and so forth. But the most sustainable, findable, accessible, and interoperable ways to share your data is using a research data repository. Research data repositories are databases of well-described, well-documented, and well-managed research data sets, evidence for scholarly arguments. Research data repositories provide metadata, technical infrastructure, and policy and data use support to help ensure research data is fair and research evidence is preserved. Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, on to the next one. As the next slide shows, there are many different research data repositories in the data sharing ecosystem. Among these types are funder and subject-specific repositories that have particular characteristics supporting specific metadata standards and so forth. There are generalist repositories that allow deposits from all subject areas. And then, of course, there are national repositories, such as Dataverse NO. The cost to deposit varies. In some cases, it's free for small data sets, and there may be paid services to support data sets of hundreds of terabytes or even petabytes. Research data repositories, like Dataverse installations, play a very important role in connecting research objects, like datasets, journal articles, within the scholarly ecosystem. The combination of a researcher's dataset and journal citations contribute to their scholarly footprint and often play a role in career advancement and securing funding. Now next, Sonia is going to talk about the Dataverse platform and its features.
Okay, thank you very much. So the repository, the software provides numerous features to help support data management and sharing throughout the life cycle. Specifically, the features support making data fair, including the availability of APIs, managed access, private data sharing workflows such as private URLs and anonymous peer review, integrations, and metadata exporting in numerous formats. Dataverse installations have Dataverse repository platforms have a number of integrations and APIs. We have ways of getting data in, embedding data on websites via a widget. That's one of the features available with the Dataverse collection. We have analysis and computation via Data Explorer tools, discoverability, research data preservation features, and of course, APIs. We have all of these APIs to make publicly accessible. So you have native API, search API, data access APIs, and metric APIs. So the repository provides numerous features to help support data management and sharing throughout the life cycle. And Dataverse's installations have this graphic user interface, but most data analysts prefer to interact with the Dataverse using its multiple APIs. Due to the richness of the metadata and the breadth of its features, the Dataverse object model is complex. The pyDataverse Python library offers a convenient way to download, upload, and transform Dataverse collections, data sets, and data files using an object-oriented API. pyDataverse is under active development, so we encourage you to join our working group and make a pull request to participate. There's a working group and there's a GitHub that you can join for this. This slide shows some of the Dataverse AI resources, tools, and projects that are either in production, under development, or are planned. Community members are steadily developing additional AI tools and support. Ask the Data that's noted here is one of the protocols that's in use in the Harvard Dataverse repository instance at Harvard University. So the repository, the Harvard Dataverse repository, is free and endowed, and it's open to all researchers. It was made available in 2006 to the research community to use to share research data. Our repository is specifically a collaboration between Harvard Library, Harvard University Information Technology, and IQSS, where the Dataverse project is developed. It includes and welcomes all file types and disciplines, even though initially it was built for social science data. And we do not currently support sensitive data. All data have to be de-identified or anonymized prior to being shared in our repositories. So initially built to support social science data, the repository is used by researchers in numerous disciplines, as you can see. So we have arts and humanities, medicine, health and life science, and earth and environmental sciences, just to name a few. We also have research projects, institutions, journals, as well as labs and departments. And it is the largest of all of the Dataverse installations around the world. Harvard affiliates get 2.5 terabytes per account of free storage for their research projects. Non-affiliates get 1 terabyte per account. We also have paid large data services that we developed in 2024 because of the increased request to support larger data projects. We have links to our documentation here on the large data services, and we have an intake form that goes along with our large data services, and there is a required data packaging model that goes along with that. So I'm highlighting 2 of our larger collections for their unique workflows within Harvard Dataverse Repository. IFPRI, the International Food Policy Research Institute, has been depositing data with the Harvard Dataverse Repository since 2008. We've worked closely with them throughout the years, specifically in gathering metrics for their community. They have 8 sub-collections that you see across the top of their page: ASTI, Nexus, Harvest Choice Impact. And what's nice is that each sub-collection has a team of curators that manage that collection. And since permissions are not inherited, the curation management is for the team that has access to each sub-collection. It's one of the nice features of workflow and access that the repository provides. And CAFE, a more recent collection, is an NIH-funded collaboration between BU and the Harvard School of Public Health and the Dataverse Project team at IQSS. They developed this collection in about 2022, 23, and they also have harvested a number of collections from other sources to increase data discoverability and improve access to data related to their mission. With harvesting, the CAFE collection is now over 42,000 files in the span of a few years. I've included a link to a recent interview with the CAFE team and our team at IQSS that I published as part of our National Institute of Health Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative Co-opetition grant that is now going into its 5th year starting this March. So I mentioned harvesting with CAFE. So the Harvard Dataverse Repository in general harvests metadata from 41 outside repositories, organizations, most of them other Dataverse installations, totaling over 119,000 data sets and over 2 million files to increase the discoverability of data that are shared in other sources. Clicking on any harvested collection or data set or file will take you to the original data source for any restricted or managed content. And I've included here a link to our paid services for both large data and curation services. And that's available on our repository support page. We also have trainings and a calendar that you can visit, and our contact to reach out to us about interest in using the Harvard Dataverse repository or interest in getting an installation of the software. And now we're going to move on to some new features or upcoming features. Kaylin, I think this goes back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've got the Dataverse software is under active development. We've got a very vibrant community that's contributing to new features, bug fixes, things like that. We've got a number of these new features and services that have either been released or coming soon. Among them are newly redesigned and responsive UI that's implemented in React.js. Richer APIs, so we're enriching the APIs, so there'll be a great opportunity there. And then also support for large data and indigenous data in Harvard Dataverse. We're implementing more AI-powered tools, particularly to support depositors in choosing metadata and describing their data sets. And we're also adding some support for differential privacy tools. And then finally, also we're supporting locally fair or restricted metadata visibility tools that allows you to prevent some data sets from being visible to different members of your community, depending upon your needs. We release a new version every 3 months, so I encourage y'all to visit the GitHub repository for updates and learn more about releases. Next, Philip is going to talk about Global Dataverse Community Consortium, which is the Dataverse open source community.
Yes, thank you, Kaylin and Sonia. Can you move to the next slide, Sonia? So this is about the Global Dataverse Community Consortium, or in short, GDCC. GDCC was established in 2018 with the goal or mission to support the Dataverse community, and we do that through coordinating and facilitating collaboration, community efforts, and also shared resources worldwide. Also, the GDCC provides governance and strategic guidance to keep the Dataverse project aligned with user needs from our diverse community. This collaborative venue that GDCC provides helps institutions leverage economies of scale to support their different Dataverse repositories around the world. Here we have listed a number of different types of community service and activities that GDCC provides or coordinates or facilitates. For example, we provide DOIs or digital object identifiers for Dataverse installations through a GDCC DataSite consortium membership. We also support the coordination of community development efforts. We provide design guidance through initiating strategic redesign discussions and documents. We develop and maintain related. We provide development and maintenance related efforts to community contributions and issues and projects, and so on. And in this talk here, I would like to focus on three types of community activities, and they are community meetings, community calls, and working groups. So for the first one, the community meetings, that's maybe our main event. It's an annual event that we have been having since 2015, and it evolved from a Harvard-hosted event to be globally distributed. So we have had events outside of Harvard, one in Portugal, in Mexico, and last year in North Carolina, and later this year in May, we will be meeting in Barcelona in Europe. So as I said, this is our main venue, and we use this event to facilitate and discuss past, ongoing, and future community efforts, and also fostering networking and collaboration. It's usually organized by rotating teams, so we have the local hosts and also other more experienced community members would join the organizing committee. We usually plan these events with a community survey just to identify relevant topics, for example, metadata, large data support, AI governance, and so on. And then there is an open call for contributions, and we usually have different kind of formats at these meetings, like talks, workshops, roundtables, demos, posters, and so on. Some challenges at the community meeting is maybe that we have it can be a challenge to engage newcomers to figure out how we can what kind of formats we can use there, and there is of course some travel limitations, and also when we have hybrid formats that can be kind of challenging to include also the participants participating online. Then we have our next main contribution, or what we try to coordinate is the working groups. Usually they form organically when community members identify a shared need or goal. They're led by volunteer coordinators, and also they are usually open and inclusive for everyone to contribute. And what we also have noticed some common characteristics. So usually we would have regular meetings in these working groups. We also we also document our progress and have some updates via mailing list and community events. And also here we have some challenges. For example, there might be a limited capacity by the community members, and also shifting leadership and some extended timelines. And here I provide you two examples of working groups. We had a couple of years ago a sustainability working group. This was initiated by GDCC, and we created a mandate and a charter. And the work we did in this group was guided by the It Takes a Village framework. And we produced a public report with strategic recommendations, which I'll come back to. And another working group was the external working vocabulary working group. There, the members defined a mechanism to use such externally hosted controlled vocabularies, and they created a design document to reach consensus. And then finally, they also contribute to develop this new feature in the software. And now it's implemented. We can use this feature now with ORCID, which is an ID for researchers, and also ROAR, which is an ID for organizations, in addition to keywords like subject-specific keywords or others. And then we have the community calls. Usually we have this call once a month. It's virtual and open to all community members. And we use this platform to share updates, discuss issues, showcase new developments, and we also encourage collaboration through these calls and informal knowledge exchange. And usually or often we would have a guest presentation to feature some new development or a demo, and then followed by a Q&A session. And we also document all the notes from these calls, and often also a recording. They are openly available online. And this brings me to some challenges in the community. The main challenge is probably due to the growing popularity of the Dataverse software, and I try to illustrate this in the next slide or slides. So here you see the number of installations, and in orange, and the served organizations in blue, because one installation can either serve one organization or several ones. So you see there has been quite a rapid growth in the popularity. And on the next slide, you can see the merged GitHub pull requests in two of our main GitHub repositories. Also here you can see the kind of steady increase in pull requests. And on the next slide, this shows conversations we have in our Google email group. So as you see, it's increasing steadily, and usually people get kind of, if you have a question or want to raise an issue, we get an answer quite soon by one or more community members. Yeah, so this was kind of the bright side of growth, and it testifies to the popularity of the Dataverse software and the ecosystem of integrated and associated tools and services, and also that the people and organizations that use the Dataverse platform software, that they see the benefits of this open source software driven by a global community of dedicated professionals. But then the challenge has some kind of data growth has some challenges, and because the community includes members with different needs, expectation, and levels of commitment. So this poses some challenges to the sustainability of the community and the software. So when we kind of realize this, we identify two main questions that we should ask ourselves. The first one is how to make sure that the Dataverse software and the ecosystem of associated tools and services are developed and maintained in a sustainable way. to support the needs of the community. And the second question is how to further empower the GDCC to contribute to the Dataverse community with the support and services we need. And as you can see from the next slide, we addressed these challenges of growth by establishing a working group in 2023. And the aim of this group was to provide evidence-based, community-reviewed, and consensus-based recommendations on how to sustain and grow the Dataverse community. And in October 2024, the group delivered their final report with 10 recommendations on how to sustain and grow the community. And on the next slide, you can see these 10 recommendations. I won't go through it, all of them. They are publicly available online, but just to mention a few of them. So for example, one of the recommendations is to establish a new legal organization or a legal organization for GDCC. For example, that would help us to be better positioned to apply for funding, for example. And another recommendation is to establish a more formalized governance of the GDCC. And also the third one here, very important to more explicitly demonstrate the values and benefits of GDCC membership and strengthen the value exchange. So I think this was the last slide. Here is just an overview of different resources that might be useful. Yeah, so I hope we have time for discussion and questions.
Thank you, everybody. I do see a question right now, which is, can you speak to how you implement FAIR when a project is submitted to the repository?
Who would like to take that one?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat the question, please?
Yes.
Sure. Can you speak to how you implement FAIR when a project is submitted to the repository?
Yes. So the software itself is made to help researchers move their data towards FAIR. So between the metadata, the DOI, the files and the file level metadata, and the interoperable tools and the requirements for proper data sharing or the best practices for proper data sharing, all of those are captured in the software workflow. There's a deposit template, and they have specific metadata blocks for different disciplines. But in particular, the citation metadata block itself captures a lot of information about a submission. So we support reproducibility data workflows. Journals tend to utilize that a lot, and they utilize a submit for review workflow. So a lot of journals are already reviewing the deposits to ensure that there's data code and README files associated with replication data sets, which follows best practices for moving a data set into the reproducibility workflow and ensuring that reproducibility works. The deposit template, again, will ask you for files. You get to customize the metadata that supports your particular discipline. There's social science, there's journal metadata, there's life sciences, there's geospatial sciences, to name a few. And so in general, it guides you towards FAIR practices. In the Harvard Dataverse repository instance, for example, while it's open and has a submit for review and a post-publishing workflow, we check deposits to ensure that they're meeting best practices best as they can. And we encourage them to add additional metadata or additional files to really improve the reusability of their data and making their data more fair.
Next question, what are the differences between Dataverse and CKAN?
I would say in that regard that they are similar, solving similar problems. So there are quite a number of research data repository platforms in the ecosystem. You've probably heard of Figshare, you may have heard of Zenodo, you may have heard, obviously there's CKAN. There's a variety of these software platforms. In some cases, they vary minimally in terms of specific features. You know, they're all pretty much striving towards what we would call data fairness. So we're all striving to provide support for lots of metadata, different file formats, different file viewers, and things like that. Where things can differ a bit and where the Dataverse software differs from CKAN is that we are producing the software itself with the expectation that you, the installation manager, the folks who want to create a new installation, will install it yourselves. We don't offer a paid service, for instance, or a cloud-based service to host that for you. Different installations, such as Harvard Dataverse, can host specific collections. And there are certainly installations such as Dataverse NO, Borealis, Texas Digital Library, and so forth, that are consortia of many different organizations that are, kind of operating under one umbrella. But I would say that, kind of the main difference is we, the Dataverse Project, do not offer a paid hosted option, a turnkey solution where, you just pay a fee and out of the box you get, the server space, the bandwidth, all of those kinds of things paid for. The assumption for Dataverse Project is that you will have your IT department decide how you want to deploy that infrastructure. So I'd say that's the biggest difference. But in terms of platform features, the features you're going to find across this ecosystem are all pretty similar because we're all striving to solve the same problem and give the same support to users and to their data.
So this leads me to another question, which I don't know if it's very relevant, but is this a place where data standards would be something that's being considered?
Yes, so the software implements a variety of standards across different avenues, whether it's data packaging, metadata standards, these file format standards, best practices around particular types of file formats for specific discipline specific data. So in terms of, to the extent possible, the software enables and supports and bakes in standards. So as an example, we support the export of croissant metadata to platforms like Google Data Search and things like that. We support different formats, schema.org, etc. So we are implementing and adhering to specific standards in a variety of spaces. I think that maybe another piece of your question could get at how do each installation, and keep in mind that each Dataverse installation is governed distinctly by their organization, right? By their university or their governmental agency and so forth. And those individual installations may have specific policies that address the community that they're serving and the specific expectations within that community and within that wider set of stakeholders for that group. So that's another way that we address standards, right, is through the ability for different installations to customize their installation, to customize their policies and so forth, how they're going to implement it. Sonia, right. Philip, do you want to add to that?
I actually did want to mention that the slide on the Harvard Dataverse repository that points to the CAFE RCC Research Coordination Project on health and extreme weather. The interview that we did covers the work that we did with that team to help build some of the standards that were non-existent to bring a community together in a data sharing environment. The interview is lengthy, but they do talk about that need, and we point to the GitHub development page on all of the things from custom metadata blocks to some extracted data efforts that we used to create this community that was still developing and trying to determine the standards that could bring them all together under an umbrella in a repository setting. So that is in one of the slides. So that's something that you should look, everyone should look at if you have an interest.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, so Sonia mentioned the custom metadata blocks, and then you have the availability possibility to define different kind of to connect to different external control vocabularies. So there you can connect to the vocabularies that are standard in your community, for example, and that you can do in different ways in the different installations.
Right. I mean, one of the big things we've worked on, the Dataverse software and the Harvard Dataverse repository over the past 4 years, is the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative grant from NIH, where we were building tools, metadata, standards around biomedical research data sharing. So in collaboration with policies that National Institute of Health had, you had 7 repositories come together to work from search and browse to connecting digital objects to metadata standards that we know the research landscape should support. And Dataverse was a big player in that. And we continue to work with the biomedical data community to help support their type of data in these generalist repositories.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what is the most significant development need for the project?
That's a really great question. So there are a number of areas that I wouldn't say there's a single best need, but I would say there are a number of areas that are areas of opportunity and areas that we welcome contributions and welcome some development effort. So one area is external tools. So data repositories are kind of part of a pipeline or a workflow of scientific development. And so we interact during the active phase of the research lifecycle when scientists are creating data, generating data. But we also operate kind of at the end, right? When the research project is finished and folks want to archive their data with us. So one way that folks would like to do more with the repositories, with the installations out there, is through the use of external tools. So we offer a really good platform for being able to interact with the software itself through external tools, whether they're curation tools, they can maybe file previewers, which are always welcome because there's a proliferation of file formats. So if there's a particular file format that is important for your area of research, then viewers are always welcome. All kinds of tools that serve as connectors. So we have, for instance, an integration with RSpace, which is an electronic lab notebook product. And so that's wonderful to be able to kind of connect the Dataverse installations into this active research pipeline. We have software that is based on open on demand, which is for high performance computing that interacts with the Dataverse software that allows you to share files back and forth. So a lot of these kinds of opportunities. Then there's also, of course, always metadata enrichment that can help. And so that's another opportunity. There are always standards, metadata standards that are available that we don't initially support, that maybe it's a small community that would like to use our repositories, and we don't immediately support that. So expertise in the field of metadata and being able to define metadata standards is very helpful as well. So those are some of the key areas, I guess I would say. And again, we welcome pull requests. We welcome you to join in and really dive in and see what areas you have of interest, because it's almost a guarantee that there's a spot for you within the software. Right?
Next question is, can you share any stories of successful execution or outcomes from the Dataverse that stand out to you?
I think the Cafe project is one exceptional one. Sonia, do you want to speak to that one, because you did a wonderful interview with the Cafe team, but I think that that's a very great example.
Sure. There's a lot of examples. I mean, I've been with the Dataverse project since it started. And I'm the main curation person that started with the project and have helped numerous teams over the years. They're all a success story in some way. But Cafe was such a unique and large project. So again, they had funding from NIH to bring this community together. It's the BU School of Public Health and the Harvard T. Chan School of Public Health. And you had this community that really wanted to bring researchers together and to start sharing data outside of their laptops, outside of their personal environments, and in repositories, and connect all different sources of data related to their community. Again, if you look at the interview, they talk about this. They talk about how even today they still see people sharing data in spaces that are not preserved, that are not governed, and it's a good way to lose data. And so this team, specifically the School of Public Health, has been working with IQSS for a while on other projects. So, you know, we brought them aboard and said, let's try this in the Harvard Dataverse repository. We will provide support for unlimited amounts of data. So there's the large data functionality that they utilize for different projects that they've brought in. And then a devoted developer and a person to assist with acquisition and curation. So that's in collaboration with our team. We worked on all of this together. They had an outreach model. They have a training model for their community. But we had a lot of discussions about what standards could look like. So the Dataverse software comes with a basic geospatial metadata block. But that geospatial metadata block is a very basic standard of geospatial data. And in their field of climate and extreme weather, they needed other metadata fields that you're not going to find in these standards that are available now. So we had long discussions and development around how to create these additional custom metadata blocks that were very different from the standard geospatial metadata block and very particular to the type of data they wanted to share. And in creating this metadata block, it was not just making it available in the repository for people to come into this now collection that's available for people to deposit and would go through a submit for review workflow, because they wanted to ensure that each deposit met good standards in sharing when they opened the collection to the community. But it was also training the community and understanding what fields were important and why they're important. So there was a lot of training, a lot of education that they were doing as well around the things that we were creating for them in the repository and how to best use it. And of course, as professional data archivists and data curators, we were also having discussions with the CAFE team about what could be done, what could not be done, and how to bring these kind of two existences together, right? We want standards, we want high-level standards that other groups could adopt. We don't want things to be so different that they're very particular to one group and wouldn't serve a related community. So it really gave us an opportunity to learn about this area of climate and extreme weather research. Well, they also kind of learned from us as well about what standards look like in repositories that want to preserve and make their features and the things they develop available to a wider community. So in just about 3 years, they've brought in over 1,000 data sets. I think they're over like 3,000. Maybe they're at 3,000 data sets. I can't remember right now. But that's in 3 years' time. This whole idea of harvesting data, right? So one of the things that they complained about in, say, the interview when we said, what's going on with the data sharing environment in your area, was the resources were everywhere. Nobody could go to one space and find all of the resources. Dataverse has this harvesting feature where you can bring in metadata from other sources and make it discoverable in your platform. That doesn't mean that restricted data gets to be downloaded on the Harvard repository. As I mentioned in my talk, you can go to a harvested collection on the Harvard Dataverse repository in CAFE. When you click on one of those harvested collections, it takes you to the original repository because they also have workflows and controls over their data. But the most important thing is it's giving you a view of the resources that are out there in one place. And that is something that was very hard to do before the world of digital repositories and harvesting of content. So it was a really good learning experience. We're still moving forward. Part of the effort that CAFE took on was also extracted data, which means they were going to sources that may no longer be available and helping them bring data into this collection. so that it is preserved and available for other people to find and to reuse. So.
Thank you. Next question is, what repositories of genetic and metabolic data are available?
I dropped an example in the chat box there about NIH. So NIH has, I would classify genetic metabolic data as being really domain specific. These are the kinds of data that you probably will not find in a generalist repository. Very often data that's produced, data of that type that's produced are produced by research that basically funded research. And it's often very tightly controlled, particularly genetic data, due to the sensitivity of it. And so I guess I would say one good place to look, at least in the United States, is at the NIH's website. So I dropped into chat a link to their list of domain-specific repositories, and you can browse those. There's lots of them. There are a ton of them. You can browse those repositories to see if there are some specific ones that might meet your needs. I think that would be a good starting place in the United States. I'm not sure, Philip, do you have any recommendations for European genetic data and things like that? But they are regulated very often, so that's a barrier, can be a barrier.
Yeah, I think in Europe we could use an overview provided by a network called Elixir. I just pasted it into the chat. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And I also shared one group that's sharing a really large project on the Harvard Dataverse repository. It is the Brain Genomics Superstruct project. I put in a link to an interview that I did with their team late last year. They use a restricted access workflow that the Dataverse software provides. And this project, it's bringing together all this genome data, over 1,500 human participants. Even though it's anonymized, they're using the proper sharing best practices of managed access to their data. Very popular collection. One of the things about the Harvard Dataverse repository is that we have a very small team. And so we talk to everybody who has a data sharing need that's got this kind of project. I talk to everybody that has this kind of need for sharing these kind of projects. And that's one of the genomics data that's shared there. That link is also Zenodo, and it's the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative page that talks about the efforts of Dataverse and these 6 other generalist repositories to support NIH sharing data. I'll just go ahead. I'll drop the link to the cafe interview as well, since we've talked about that, but that's a resource for you right there as well.
Thank you. And I had one more question. There's no more in the chat, so I have a couple of questions of my own. I looked at the graph, which is on your homepage, which is dataverse.org. I scrolled down and I saw the where the installations are. And I wanted to know if there was any, I see that, places like Africa, the East, and Middle East don't have a lot of installations. And I'm just sort of curious to know, what your thoughts are on that. Like, have you sort of explored why, and are there any initiatives, or is it just, sharing facts?
I'll venture one thing, which is that we only put people on the list who've let us know that they have installations. So we do know that there are folks out there who are using the Dataverse software, but they may be using it internally. They may not be, basically, they may not want to be on the map. So it may be the case that some organizations, for whatever reasons, their data, for instance, is private, et cetera, that they just don't want to be on the map. So that's certainly a possibility. I think that, I would say globally, data sharing is very much community driven. Community meaning like scientific community driven. So depending upon the local needs, folks will, eventually start bubbling up, and you will get critical mass, and then at a certain point, a repository will form, if you will. So there's a lot of kind of grassroots to the formation of this. Very often it is sparked by some kind of a regulatory need. So as an example, in Europe, in the United States, a lot of times funding agencies will require you to share your data, and they have specific expectations on how and how long the data will be shared for and so forth. And that requires researchers to make the hop from sharing via email or kind of informal means to actually needing to have an infrastructure to share. So I think, that in some cases, it's just that the community isn't to the point where they're ready or they even need yet to do this. Sometimes they're also sharing in other repositories. For instance, Harvard Dataverse is open to the worldwide web, the worldwide research community. And so we do have a lot of folks from those nations in our repository. So even though there may not be an installation there, the scientists are actively contributing their data. Sonia, Philip, please add in.
Yeah, and I guess we've had some, for example, we got an ORCID grant to promote the Dataverse more in communities in Africa, South America, to cater more for their needs, like with integration with ORCID. Yeah.
Is their use impacted by internet access?
So,
yeah, I guess, yeah.
I mean, I unfortunately do have communities not outside of Norway, a lot of communities in Africa and India. There will be some connectivity issues, unfortunately. But we've also ventured to those places to give presentations and talk, and all of the talks that I have been to talk about improving internet access and connectivity in order to, to especially for around research repository access. So,
and there is a lot of interest, I'll say that. Like whenever you go, like folks really are interested to do it, but in some cases there are infrastructure barriers that need to be addressed first. And you'll find them pop up more often or first in a university, a national university, or especially like a national technical university, where the expertise is on site to actually do the installations and so forth, or government. There's some kind of, like I said, a government impetus to do this, to share it, or to do research efficiency across a region. I've spoken with folks in Africa where that is something that they're striving to do, to, not spend the same research dollars in multiple spots studying the same thing. So, by requiring that folks share their data, that then can help increase that research efficiency across like a whole region. So that is of interest.
Right. So, I mean, one of our latest projects in a big continent is in Africa. UbuntuNet and Africa Archives group have an installation that the Dataverse Project team helped set up an MVP, and it's going to serve all of the continent for data sharing. And they have resources on UbuntuNet, and specifically had AWS and Amazon folks at their last big conference to talk about the connectivity and improvement of the connectivity. But in order to work, that's what you have to have. And right. So here's this big installation of Dataverse that's coming. And we want to ensure that people are able to do the kind of work they need and access the data they need. They're one of the groups that will be harvesting content, open content, and harvesting additional content from African affiliated organizations and institutions and researchers from the Harvard repository to their instance of the Dataverse installation to make data more discoverable in that continent.
And one last question that I'm curious about is, what was your experience during COVID in terms of the data being added, needing to be added, post-COVID, about COVID?
Well, I can take this one first, Kaylin.
Please do.
Nothing slowed down. As a matter of fact, you know,
It ramped up.
we moved online. The entire Dataverse project team moved online so quickly. Like we were sent home and said, we're going to try, working at home for a week. That was a Friday. By Monday, we were all set up to work from home because that was when things closed down. And nothing slowed down, especially the COVID data sharing. Anything around COVID started coming in immediately. The repositories were actively being accessed. Number of curated collections that linked COVID-related content across Dataverse repositories were generated right away. And so having a digital platform, I think, is obviously what made that available. I mean, I've worked in a standalone data repository with standalone data for over 30 years. And the difference of having things online for access, I know exactly what that looks like. I know what that looks like in terms of metrics. I know what that looks like in terms of ease. So I think that having these repositories available at that time was just an incredible thing. I don't even know what else to call it. Yeah. Philip, Kaylin?
Yeah, and I think it also pushed forward some of the development. For example, like the support for external controlled vocabularies. That is kind of essential if you want to make kind of pull data from different sources and make them interoperable.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the last of the questions. Thank you so much to Kaylin, Sonia, and Philip for your time and sharing about Dataverse with the community. I made a list of all the links that were shared in the chat, and so I'm going to put them in a document or some easy way for everybody who's watching this video later to access it. So I will do that, and I will be in touch once the video is up. If you have any last words, so feel free to, say it now.
No, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thanks very much.
We hope the information was useful and helpful.
And please feel free to reach out. We're a friendly bunch. We're happy to talk to you.
And just because it wasn't noted, the 2026 Dataverse Community Meeting is in Barcelona the week of May 12th at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. Registration is not yet open, but if you search, I don't have the link handy right now, but registration will open soon. Proposal submissions period has ended. And thank you for putting that in there, 2026 Dataverse Community Meeting. Registration will open, and you'll see the announcements on our Blue Sky, my LinkedIn page. So you'll see the registration open message getting shared around, okay? If people are interested in joining. There's not going to be a virtual option this year, so.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.